So one of the biggest things about Fantasy Premier League is the wildcard, when you get to change all 15 of your players. Today we're going to go over when to use your wildcard and how to optimise it, coming up next. What's up guys, and welcome to JNO United, bringing the best in football news, entertainment and games. And today we're looking at the wildcard, when's the best time to use it, and what did the best players last season do with their wildcard. But before we get into that, make sure to subscribe if you're new around here and leave in the comments down below what your strategy is. But we all know when the shit hits the fan, people sometimes panic and use their wildcard early. But let me know what your plan is for the wildcard, and I'll tell you what mine is and what the best players did last season. Now, last season the wildcard changed. I believe before that the wildcard you could use one any time in the season and the other one you could use in the January transfer window. But feel free to correct me in the comments down below if that's wrong. Last year was the first time I took it properly seriously, FPL. And last year the rules were before game week 20 you could use your wildcard, and then you had a second wildcard which you could use after game week 20. So you only had two wildcards to use, and you could use one in the first half of the year, one in the second. Now my plan for this year and what the best players did last year was the first wildcard was used early. Now the reason for this is because everything is up in the air at the start of the season. We do not know what is going to happen. All we know this season, Crystal Palace will be the Leicester of last season. But we don't know that right now. And I know that sounds crazy that I've said Crystal Palace, but I'm just thinking of who's had quite a few transfers. So the strategy is to use your wildcard early by the first international break. So 3 game weeks in, we then have an international break. Use your wildcard then, and you can analyse 3 game weeks worth of games and decide who the players are that can take you to the top of the table. Another plus about that is with an international game week you have 2 weeks to make your decisions, but also to try and up the value of your squad. Now if you bring in the players at the end of game week 3 and before game week 4 that are going to rise in price, and they rise enough that you can transfer them out for a profit, then you could up the total value of your squad, and instead of having 100 million to play with, you could have 101 million, maybe if you do really well more than that. But that is also another strategy because most of the transfer activity is done early on in the season when the most active players are around. So early wildcard is what I'm going to do, and it's what the best players last year did because it allowed them to see how things were going in the league and pick the players that had the stats, both physical goals and assists and underlying stats, to make their side a side capable of being in the top 1% of players. Now of course you could probably get into the top 1% of players and play your wildcard later, but I know what I'm going to do because I remember last season how wrong my side was early on, and if I'd pulled the trigger on that wildcard earlier, maybe I'd be talking to you now with a better rank from last season. Now the strategy for the second wildcard, and again I played it early, but this time last year I played it early and it benefited me because I climbed some serious positions in the second half of the season. But the main strategy by the best players is to play it around the double game weeks. Try to get as many double game week players in, because even if they don't score points, a double game week player is going to score the solo points, the 60-minute points, the 90-minute full game points twice instead of once. So bring in those players for the double game week that have 2 games in 1 game week, and you could optimize your point total for that game week and climb the rankings. So most of the top players last season played their wildcard just before a double game week, bringing in as many players that were playing 2 games in as they possibly could, and that way they got a pretty high score in that double game week. Now of course you can't play your wildcard the same time you play a chip. That is why they played the wildcard earlier than the double game week, so that they could play one of their chips, either triple captain or bench boost, which meant they had 15 players playing in the double game week. So this year that is my strategy. I'm going to try and do what the top players do because I want to be one of the top players. And from all the records I've looked over of last season, that's what the majority of the people in the top 50 did. So that is definitely what I'll be doing this year. My team will be picked to be as good as possible for those first 3 game weeks, and then I'm wildcarding, and I'm hopefully going to know by then who needs to go into my side. Anyway guys, thank you for tuning in as always. I've been JNO. You've been awesome, and remember, it's all about the game.